Live. There it
And
is.
hey, yeah, we are on the air again because that's how this works. This is Cameron Marceau and my partner in crime, Sridhar Yadavali,
Hi,
with
everyone.
his outstanding Panama hat.
It's
I'm
beautiful.
I'm a little under the weather. I've got a mild case of Ebola. I'm I feel that I've got the crud, and I because I'm in America, it'll be okay. So um,
Hey, there's some antiviral drugs I haven't tested yet that I can give you.
uh, awesome.
Me and the boys we're cooking it up right here in the basement.
That's what I love to hear.
It's
Pioneers.
your it's your own version of Breaking Bad.
Okay, I'm straight.
We have a special
Genetics instead.
our special guest this evening is Mr. Jeff Salyards, who is also from Knox College, and he graduated the same year I did. So we're in the same class, and I don't know. Basically, the big news for him now is that he is a published author, and not only just any author, he's a fantasy novelist, which is like that's my dream. So you can't have it. You've you've I'm pissed. You just stop it. Stop being successful. Stop writing things and getting them published. That's not fair. But
All
no,
right.
I'm totally I'm
You're
totally
totally serious. I know you are.
I'm gonna pick your brain because like it's amazing. I love the fact that you went and did that. That because like I could write a novel and get it published, but first I'd have to write. That's the hard.
That is the hard part.
It's the discipline. It's the getting it down with any regularity. But before we go into that, can you tell us the path that you've traveled to? I mean, after Knox, did you stay in the state? You're up in Chicagoland area right now, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I was in Chicago right after Knox. Lived with a couple of other Knoxites.
As we all did.
Yeah. They had a little Siwash pad up there for a year where I did a number of awful, horrible jobs.
As we all did.
Yeah, door-to-door sales and security guard, and yeah, it was beautiful. I was really doing fine for myself. And then I went to grad school for a couple of years at Illinois State and got my master's in English.
Okay.
And then I worked in that area for a while, Bloomington Normal for a few years, at State Farm, corporate headquarters. Go figure.
Okay.
Where none of my skills were, applicable or useful at all, but that's where I lived and that's what I did.
Uh-huh.
And then moved back up to the Chicago area, up to Skokie, and Chicago first, and then Skokie, and then ultimately moved after I got married. Got married on a steamboat in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just have to throw that out there just while you're talking.
Oh, nice. Well played.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And so, got married on the steamboat, and then after that, I love the plug. That's great. And then went to England. My wife got a job over in England, and so went over there for a couple of years. And I was just hoping, to get any job. I figured as a Yankee, my services weren't going to really be all that useful since I wasn't pulled over there to go. She was, and so I just went hoping I'd get a job in publishing or editing, something along those lines. And sure enough, I got to work for a children's publisher over there for a couple of years. Yeah, Paragon, which was great. It was a great experience, great team, a lot of fun people from all over the world, and loved it. It was one of the better
Children's
jobs.
books?
Yeah, I was editing and writing children's books, licensed.
So what's that community like? Are they as wholesome as their books, or are they kind of crazy?
Oh, crazy! Yeah,
They know how to party.
absolutely. Well, and the Brits, and there were a lot of Brits, obviously, that I worked with. They're just so laid back, and they know that taking time and not rushing and not being insane workaholics. They just have a different pace over there. It's more relaxed and just much. They value going on vacation. They value taking time off. They value family time. They value all that, and more than we do here anyway. And so, yeah, it was, we'd go out to the pub at lunch and have 2 or 3 beers and go back to work. It was great. That was kind of a regular thing. So, yeah, I was actually sorry to leave there because I got to travel quite a bit. Because when you're living there, you're making a pound, and that's the strongest currency on earth practically. I mean, it's especially this was about 8 years ago. It was one of the best currencies out there. So you'd take that and you go travel to anywhere. Go to Italy, go to Romania, go to wherever you wanted, and you were doing really well for yourself. So it was a great experience. I loved it, and so did that for a couple of years, and then came back to the States and got a job at the American Bar Association, where I've been for the past 6 years now, and so that was kind of the day job situation. That's where I'm at now, and then during that time, especially over in England, and then coming back, that's when I started working on the first book. And worked on it on and off for almost a decade. So, Cameron, you've got plenty of time.
So you want to talk about my first book at 60? You know what I mean? I'm not worried about it now. I'm still gathering information.
Yeah,
that's right. So, yeah, I started writing it when I was over there, and kind of putzed on and off, fitfully doing it, and then kind of really hunkered down once I had kids. Oddly enough, because I finally realized I had no free time at all.
Yeah.
Zero. As Shri will obviously, I'm sure, corroborate.
This is my free time all day today.
Right. So, yeah, I just go ahead.
No. I was just saying.
I was just going to say, that realized on the clock, if I wanted to do this, I really had to just hunker down and do it. And
so when's your writing time?
At night when the kids go down.
Yeah. So is that like 9 to 2?
Not usually 2. 9 to like 11 or 12 usually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not every night. I mean, some nights, you come home from work,
Works
a
out.
long day. Yeah, you're just you're blasted, and you dealing with the family stuff, and then 9 o'clock rolls around. The last thing you want to do is go back to work. I mean, writing is work. Obviously, you know that, Cameron.
Yeah.
And so some days, it's a pain in the ass, but obviously a good problem to have. So
do you find that you can just click right into the flow?
No.
Does that happen as soon as you sit down? How long does it take for you to start to get that feeling, or that kind of where it's just coming out? And actually, is that how it works for you? I don't know.
I've gotten better about the one trick that I picked up, and it's not my trick, obviously. This is going back. I think even Hemingway might have been the first one to espouse doing this, maybe even older than that. Is you finish a chapter or a scene or whatever you're done the night before. Finish it knowing exactly where you want to go the next scene. Don't leave anything. Don't end on a note where you're kind of scrambling, thinking, I don't even know if this is a good place. I don't know what happens next. Right through that, because you want to get to a spot where you're excited to jump back in, number one. And 2, you have a good idea where it's going to go. Because for me, at least, and every writer is different, but for me, if I jump back in and it's sort of I'm at a loss and I'm not quite sure what the direction is, and I'm trying to just sort of shape the scene as I go, I end up just staring at the computer a lot and not very productive. Like an hour will go by and I'll type 3 lines.
Are you saying that when you close a chapter, you actually know what's happening, at least in the first page or the first paragraphs of the next chapter? You know what the next 2 steps or 3 steps will be, so that
right. And it's hard to do because if you're in a groove and you're moving along and you're cranking out pages and you feel like, okay, I know what I want to write next.
Might as well do it, right?
Yeah, might as well do it. Sometimes I force myself to just stop at 11:30 or whatever it is and just say, I do want to keep going, but that's good because that means when I start up tomorrow, I'll just kind of continue that and roll with it, and I'll have some momentum. So that's how it works for me.
So when you're writing, or do you think of scenes and characters just throughout your day?
Yeah, I do, and I have a notebook. I scribble stuff down during the day when it comes to me, on the train, going to and from Chicago, because I'm out in the burbs, out west. So I'll just write stuff down whenever it comes to me. Yeah, it's.
Wait a second, which train do you take?
I'm on the one from Elburn.
Uh-huh.
So it hits Schaumburg and.
So it's the Northwest line.
Yeah, that's it.
So do you when you're thinking about it, do you see it in your head? Is it a movie?
It is, yeah.
Playing? Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually how it goes.
So
that's kind of, yeah, it's definitely a cinematic sort of thing.
That's cool. Okay, awesome. So you've completed 2 books.
Yes.
And you're working on the 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to beat George R. R. Martin?
No. Well, I mean, who wouldn't want to be? But no, it's
No. Are you going to beat him? Because he's got.
Yeah. Well, the third book. The third book, I'm about a third of the way through, more than a third of the manuscript, and then so my goal is to finish that around January, February, and then spend a few months really hardcore revising the hell out of it, and then hopefully turning it in by June, and so it should publish. Fingers crossed. If I don't get Ebola or get hit by a bus, should publish, November next year.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So that's the goal. That's what we're shooting for.
So we've talked about the blood. Well, we haven't talked about the Blood Sounder series, and honestly, it's not. This is not your usual. These are 3 guys. We know each other. We know we've drunk together in college. At least in part. At least you 2 have. I may have been busy doing my own thing sometimes, but let's get an idea about family. You're with the Chicago Bar Association. Is that what you said?
American Bar Association.
The Illinois Bar Association.
American.
Oh, the big enchilada, the American Bar.
Yeah. Big mothership.
It's not regional. It's the
it's
the main group. There's a whole litany of jokes that are made about your bosses that are just, I mean, they can be brutal. I've got a pretty strong constitution when it comes to getting laughed at, but boy, lawyers just take the really crappy end of the stick.
They often do.
And I gotta wonder, in a generic sense, how much of the joke is true or not? How much of the Big J joke is effectively? I say that because the reason why guys like Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert or even Mayer, all these guys, part of the reason why they can do what they do in part is that their jokes have a layer of understood truth to them, And when we tell the lawyer joke,
Shree, watch out what you say.
You're trying to get me fired.
Because these are lawyers.
They will fire me and sue you.
I'm talking about capital lawyer and capital J joke. The generic lawyer, the generic joke.
This is why they can put up with the jokes, because in the end they get the last laugh, I think, right?
I guess. My insurance is all up, so go ahead.
When Sri is in the orange jumpsuit 6 months from now, we'll see how funny he thinks all this is.
Give it an age judicial, maybe 18. But
yeah, I'm sure that. Well, the trial would take a while. I'll say this, lawyers they do get the brunt of the joke quite a bit, and I work with a lot of different kinds of lawyers, different, family law, intellectual property, real property.
What do you do there? What's your responsibility with the lawyers?
Mostly cat wrangling. I'm a
you're
professional.
saying all lawyers are pussies. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, you just went there.
He did. I'm so not going to have a job tomorrow. This is great. I'm going to have so much more free time to write when I'm fired tomorrow. This is fantastic. Thanks.
I'm the one who wears jumpsuit, buddy. You don't have to worry about a thing.
That's right. To answer your question, Cameron, I work with different book boards for the different sections. So I'll work with the family law book board and the intellectual property law book board, and I help them develop their books for their, primarily it's books written by authors that are lawyers for lawyers. So It's to help them kind of in their practice area. So it's much more practice-oriented. Sometimes it's research or desk book, source book sort of stuff, but most of the time it's practice-oriented books specifically geared towards whatever the practice area that is. And so I work on 5 different book boards. And so, you get a wide variety. I mean, each of them have their kind of their own little culture. Like the intellectual property lawyer is much different overall, and I'm generalizing, but it has a much different. That book board has a much different tenor or feel to it than, say, the family law book board. I mean, there's like intellectual property law. They're very kind of rigid, and they make sure that every line, every T is crossed, I is dotted. I mean, they're very specific, and they are sort of like litigators, in just that a lot of them have engineering backgrounds, if that helps.
Wow.
They're very kind of.
And very obvious. I would expect that the family lawyers, there's a lot more psychology, a lot more nuance to how they have their discussion and go about. The law is less important, the more how the interpretation is made.
So yeah, you get a broad variety of. So that's one thing I do like about the job, is I don't work with just one. I think I'd probably get burnt out if I did. It's nice to have some variety, so I can jump from one to another, and it's just most of them are really good people that care about not just I'd say the vast majority of them. Some of them are in-house counsel or big business lawyers that make a buttload, and they're just really incredibly powerful. Most of the time, though, a lot of the ones that are on our books boards really care about improving their profession and helping other lawyers, and at the end of the day, helping their clients. And so, I'd say the jokes, sometimes are justified, but often, they're good people for the most part.
I guess it meant to be a funny opening, and it failed miserably, but that's okay. Try it. If I may just jump in, I really would love at some point that the awesome group, the folks that we've interviewed, get together sometime online again. Partially because Liz Webster is doing some wonderful work with revisiting cases of, I guess, of falsely accused, if you will.
Okay.
The death row crowd, or even just the falsely accused, especially in the light of DNA evidence type thing.
Right.
It would be interesting to see how the actual community of lawyers, both on the defense, criminal lawyers on the defense and on the prosecution, are handling the most newsworthy, and it's getting a lot of attention. The whole idea of let's take a second look at this.
Yeah.
And where before, as late as when we graduated, 1995, say 1996, once somebody said you're guilty, that's it, you're done. Hello, get out. Get on the orange jumpsuit. You're in. But now you've got all sorts of questions coming up. At least what I understood from Liz's work and what we've researched afterwards, or at least I did. It'd be fascinating to see from your perspective, or at least your colleagues' perspective, on that very same issue, from strictly an academic point of view, strictly hey, let's help the profession move forward.
No, I think that would be a fascinating discussion. I mean, I'm sure.
I just throw it out there for no other reason that it's something that maybe when you go to work on Monday, maybe John over at the criminal law pool, he might have an idea. Yeah.
No, I think it would be. I'd love to sit in on it. I don't know that I'd have a lot of expertise to weigh in, but I'd certainly like to hear about it. I mean, I'm sure it has impacted, as you said, it's a different animal, I think, now, especially in litigation and criminal law in particular. I'm sure the prosecution really has to be much more vigilant. They really have to make sure that they nail everything down.
Sure.
So there's no escape hatches 20 years from the road, down the road, that it's discovered, oops, fucked up, sorry.
On the flip side, that they got the right guy in the first place.
Absolutely, right. I mean, I'm sure.
Are we spinning wheels here when a perpetrator's out there somewhere?
Yeah.
On a less serious note, 3 girls, right? As I recall,
Yeah.
2 girls or 3 girls?
3.
3,
Yeah,
fantastic. Ages.
You should like do a comic strip. You have your, like the Family Circle or whatever. Because you have your like daily, affirmations. Your daily, family.
Yeah, that's been a fun little FB. We watch on FB Our Friends, and we see that your anecdotes about the morning grind, if for no other reason, or the surprising anecdote from the child. It's quite pleasing to
Well, I'm glad to hear that. They're 7, 5, and 3, and
Wow.
yeah.
If I could email my bottle of wine to you, I would.
I've got some Bacardi 151 in here, so I'm good.
Bless you, son.
Wow.
Okay. Let's the hard stuff. That's beautiful.
And 3 girls, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I've got 2, and I'm already terrified.
Well, the thing that kills me, the thing that kills me is when I try not to think about the future, because when I do, I want to crap my pants. But because at one point they will be 17, 15, and 13.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to leave the country. I'm gonna have to get a job somewhere else because it's gonna be awful. No, they're great. I love my girls, but they are a handful now, and they're already acting like teenagers.
And I think that traditions are gonna have to change because there's no way in hell I'm paying for 2 weddings. No.
No.
Okay.
Well, you know what? I think that's a conversation. I've got boys, and I'm going, dude. I don't care who they are. You like them? We've met them. We'll chat. I'll bring you to Vegas myself, baby. I'll splurge for the room. I'll give you some gambling money. And it'll be the 4 of us. Then we'll throw a party at the house when we get back from the. It's just us. Bring a BFF from either side. I can care less.
I like that plan. I do. That's good.
And then instead, we do a reception in wherever we're living. Let's invite your friends. I will fund for that, but I'm not gonna. The whole wedding with the cake, the friends, no.
No. Hell no.
And you know what? And then of course we're men. The wives have a say in this, and they're going. I'm gonna throw you out the window now. We are having a wedding. I can see all our wives doing that.
So now I'm gonna want to go back to
she might not. She might actually say, you know what?
I want to go back to the fantasy stuff again, real quick, because it kind of folded back into this because do your wife and girls know about this second life that you lead? This world. I mean, of course they know you write a book, but I
thought you were talking about my wife in Omaha. No, they don't know. They have no idea, but thank you for spilling the beans.
Yeah, exactly. No, your fantasy world. I mean, do you have? Okay, look behind me. You will see the nerdiness abounds.
Yes, I do. It's great.
And I've got stacks everywhere, and I've got this.
Nice.
My sister gave me axes and cases for some reason. But
break glass.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's just ETF rules. That's just.
So I'm up here in my attic, surrounded by my geek stuff, but my kids know about it. We watch Star Trek. We do all the and they know that I'm into this weird stuff. My wife played D&D for a while in a campaign.
Nice.
Does your wife and girls, do they know about this world that you have as well? I don't know if you have the kind of stash I do and stuff.
I do. I'm not in my office right now because it's right next to one of the girls' bedrooms. Otherwise, you would see the same sort of shelves behind me.
Okay.
So yeah, they know about it, and I have a sword on the wall, and I've got a morning star hanging over on another wall, and I mean some old prints of Friends at a Prince on the wall. I mean it's all geeked out. It's all fantasy, and so yeah, they totally know about it. I don't know how much of the nuance. My wife doesn't read fantasy at all. She's read my stuff, and that's her whole foray into fantasy. She's never read anything else.
Wow.
And yeah, and so
that's a hard, weird place to begin.
No C.S. Lewis, no Tolkien, no.
Probably. I mean, probably C.S. Lewis. I don't know about Tolkien. Maybe I'd have to ask. Back in the day, but I mean, that's just not her bag.
Right,
so
it's not her bag now. It's not.
Yeah.
But stepping into your books, that's kind of like learning to swim in the deep end. Yeah. I feel, like start off with a nice little Sword of Shannara or something,
yeah.
with the Ohmsford twins, it's like, that's the squeaky clean fantasy that kind of annoys me. It's like everything is nice and people seem very clean as they're going on extensive adventures.
Again, Cameron, I would go into the Robert Aspirin thing if you want to sort of ease them into it. Get them into the Myth and Ink adventures because they're short, sweet, ugly. Finish it off in an afternoon and go, okay, this is just a teaser. Now we get into the heavier stuff. Now they're in Game of Thrones and they're killing people.
So what does your wife think of your books?
She likes them. I mean, I actually did get her into Game of Thrones. Not the books, but the show.
Okay.
And she actually loves the show. And so, she's very picky. Like, some violence is really off-putting to her. Uh-huh. I think when it's realistic, it's really disturbing. But she likes gangster movies too, so I can't really say that. I take that back. So she picks and chooses like when she's in the mood for blood and guts, and it's not very often. So she
good. It's not one of the 5 families. We're all good. It's outside of that. It's personal.
That's right. So she wasn't shocked or appalled when she read my stuff. I mean, she knows I'm a morbid, horrible person inside. So so I think she was sort of expecting it. It wasn't didn't surprise her too much, but yeah, she wasn't put off. I think she at least told me she enjoyed it, and that's I didn't pry too much more than that. That was good enough for me.
So how did you start on this trail, this trek into fantasy? What's your background?
Well,
did you start with mythology like all of us did when we were 5 years old?
Yeah, mythology. I love mythology, and of course got into C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. Played D&D throughout high school.
Did you play it all during college?
I didn't. Oddly enough, I did not.
No, that's not odd at all. That's the natural phase.
Was there a coven at Williston at some point? There's a hardcore D&D crowd at Williston for a while.
I didn't know about that, and in fact, I wanted to have girlfriends. So, I got rid of that in my world. Like, I played D&D through high school. Yeah, and so, but then in college, that life was gone, and I kind of focused on other things, and even in my early 20s, I didn't. But, now that I'm old and fat, and I have my life set, and I can carry my dice bag with impunity. So, but
there it is.
So yeah, no, and that's the story I've heard over and over. Is that we grew up with it in the '80s, and then in the '90s when we were young bachelors and stuff, it was like, yeah, exactly. It was like, no, we're not.
Cameron,
but also,
oh, go on. You were saying.
But also, you look at the way gaming was treated in TV and movies and stuff in the '80s. It was like people on the outside looking and and there was that, but then it was also just making fun of the nerds around the table, and it was like people from the outside looking, and you'd look at their portrayal, and you'd be like, no, that's nothing like what we do and who we are. But but now that we've grew up watching Star Wars, and now we're the creators of the fantasy, of all the stories and all that when we put that as the producers of shows and movies and stuff, when we put that out, it's like, we may be making fun of it, but it's being made fun of correctly, because we're on the inside. It's like, so like, I don't know. Now I'm just rambling, but like, I feel like now it's all legitimate, Whereas like when we were young, we were tormented for it. Now that we're older, we're actually producing the content. And we get to tell those stories with impunity. So.
Well, and I think, honestly, I think, Jeff, your efforts as an author is an extension of exactly what Cameron was experiencing. You know, there was the initial taste, there was our evolution of our own selves as non-fantasy human beings, and then going back into fantasy. And now that I've had this world experience, what do I do? And I'd rather you comment on that. What Cameron has actually outlined, I think, the generic life of a fan.
The first generation of gamers.
Of gamers, and
D&D gamers.
Of fans of new fiction.
Hold that thought.
As a generator of fiction, what do you think?
Hold that thought for just 1 second. I'll be right back, 'cause I'm so sorry. Hold on for one
That's
moment.
okay. No problem.
2 minutes.
As we're still live, he's got to go pee. As we're still live, I got to wonder, though, Cameron, today, you and I are going to go visit our alma mater next week.
Yeah.
If we walk through Williston and we see a bunch of sophomore history majors playing Yu-Gi-Oh! or Bakugan, would we be as... I think you and I wouldn't be, but do you think they are getting the same derision that we would have gotten had we had our little D&D coven?
No, not at all.
Why?
Because it's not the I think it's the freedom to play however you want, and I think we understand that. So. Or
it's more of a gamer's world. Everyone's the Xbox.
And fantasy is okay. You know, living in playing with your imagination, sharing ideas, and telling stories, that's all opened up. We no longer have to behave a certain way. I feel like
do you think the roles are reversed now? The pure finance guy, the academician, the pure scientist.
They all carry dice bags now.
You're saying they all carry dice bags?
But what I'm saying is that there are a lot more people out there, especially people at certain levels. I mean, they tend to be smarter people. Actually, a lot of military too. But everybody's now more open about their experiences. I don't know if there's as many people playing, but we're not shy about it anymore. It was the kind of thing that you kept under wraps when we were in high school and in our 20s.
I wasn't very good.
Well, and I think part of it obviously is benefited by just technology, because you have, when we were growing up in the 80s, obviously pre-internet, you didn't even really necessarily know how many others there were like you out there. It was, as you said, there was the portrayal of you being an absolute geek, nerd, subculture, way on the outside of anything normal, or a worst case scenario, blamed for murders and devil worship and whatever. Yeah. And so it was kind of demonized a little bit, or at least ridiculed. Yeah. And I think as the 90s rolled around and we aged and went through college, grad school, whatever, and as you said, garnered some life experience and got out there, I think at the same time you saw this huge boom with the internet, where you got to see that it wasn't this minuscule subculture. It was tons of people had interest in this. There's all these forums and sites that started popping up immediately and attracting huge followings. And so it's not even just the mainstream, movies and games and whatever that have also obviously brought attention to it. I think it's just the fact that you have people out there that you can be in touch with. You jump on a forum and chat with somebody that's over in New Mexico about, their favorite fantasy book or their favorite game or whatever it might be. And so there's just this much more interconnected kind of web of it now, and I think that really helped bring it into the limelight, that it's not nearly as a small segment of society as you'd think that's interested in this. I mean, it's not necessarily mainstream, but it's certainly a lot more popular than people assumed 20 years ago. So,
yeah.
I got a question for you. You've obviously, you are a veteran of this modem or this environment. It's obvious that you've done a number of video interviews for your book to show your publications. we need some advice. Or I'm just curious, what were the most comfortable environments that you had doing that type of video outside of this?
Well, actually, I've only done one other video.
Oh, really? I thought
Yeah.
this would be a very common thing where the interviewers would go, okay.
No, it's for me. I mean, for some writers, yeah, they've done a buttload of them, but for me, it's relatively new. I've done a lot of online interviews, just kind of the email questions back and forth, and it's very old-fashioned that way.
Right.
That I've done tons of those, but yeah, and just in terms of media, new age, and using technology and not being a Luddite. This is my second time, so I wouldn't call me a seasoned vet.
Because I know you've done I've seen your Facebook posts where you've left the American Bar Association, you've kissed all the girls at home goodbye, and you're now on a 4-day weekend book tour, and then you're double duty back at work because you missed a day of work, just to do this. And so I'm kind of wondering if some of that had been the fantasy kids getting together and interviewing you online at your hotel while you.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah. When's the Oprah taping? Are you?
Yeah. Well,
has she invited you? Have you been picked as the book of the month yet?
Strangely enough, she has not returned my calls. I just don't understand.
I don't think she's into the fantasy thing.
I don't think so.
Favorite thing.
Right here.
So. This is one of my favorite things.
I would jump up on a chair right now if I could.
So. Okay, so let's just dive right into your stories then. I mean,
synopsis.
I've read them both, and I thought that they were really refreshing.
Okay.
They were really good. I liked them a lot because, all of the thing about fantasy is that it seems very cookie cutter to me. Like, there's always this massive journey to fight this evil overlord against all odds, and these crazy characters, and it's almost like they're all following the pattern of the Lord of the Rings, and yours does not do that. There is traveling, but you don't know what's going on, and it's not necessarily. I mean, to some extent, they are the evil overlords, and it's more like I don't know, something you'd see like somebody you follow, like Hunter S. Thompson with the bikers, or a news reporter traveling with Marines or something.
An embedded reporter in a war zone.
Yeah, exactly. So the story is really different. It's just that there's swords and I really like that a whole lot because I felt like it just really broke up the monotony of a lot of fantasy. Now, maybe I just haven't read a lot of good fantasy lately because maybe a lot of people are doing a lot more things than what Terry Brooks did with Shannara.
Yeah, I would say that that's definitely true. In the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a ton of great authors that have come out with really non-formulaic stuff that really challenges all those tropes, that goes in different directions, that really kind of wants to break away from the whole Tolkien, Shannara, that, as you said, the big bad overlord that needs to be overthrown, and the quest of the good guys to do it, and so many of the things that come along with that are just part and parcel of that storyline for so many older fantasy books. I think that there's plenty of writers that love to really challenge that, and Cameron Hurley is one that immediately jumps to mind. She's got some really fantastic sci-fi. It's not necessarily fantasy, but sort of has fantasy elements to it that is really, really engaging and interesting. I mean, there's tons of them. Mark Lawrence is one that's relatively new. Let's see, who else? Richard Morgan, again, more sci-fi. He's done some recent fantasy, but stuff that really outside the box and definitely breaks a lot of your expectations going in and thwarts them. Stuff that you might think you know how it's going to proceed just because you've read 1,000 books like that. Yeah. They take delight in kind of going in the opposite direction. Joe Abercrombie is one. He wrote his first book about 10 years ago, I think it is, or give or take 8 years ago. And he's written almost a new book every year, and they're all it's kind of subversive, almost intentionally. I want to set up expectations and then totally knock them down. And so you kind of get a feeling, especially in his first couple of books, you think you know what's going to happen next, and that he's really playing with those and sets up kind of you're almost drawing you in that direction, and then, as I said, just loves to ambush you and say, yeah, actually, no. Scratch all wrong. This is what's really going to happen.
I have to admit, Jeff, it was your books that got me back into reading fantasy fiction that I sort of dropped after the Potter series. I dropped after... I didn't really... or I left it to reading to children. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was grabbing. I'm knee deep in Rick Riordan's latest 5-part series because the kids are interested and they want me to read to them every night. I pick this and they're totally getting into it. I'm getting them started. My last set of books was Neil Stephenson, and I actually thought that your series had surprisingly good rapport, or at least I could get into it because I just got off of his historical fiction. It was these people traveling through a certain period of time, these fictional characters living their lives in the Baroque cycle. It was the 1700s, in the Baroque period. But the fact that I'm looking at the main character, I'm looking at Archie as a chronicler of what's happening around him in real time. Real time just happens to be in a different world, different place, different environment.
Well, the kind of the genesis of the books actually goes back to, I love history and historical fiction, and I've always loved both. And Jean Froissart wrote these chronicles in the 100 Years' War, where he accompanied this military company. And it's not fiction; it's historical, and it's sort of dry, and I mean it's written by somebody in the 14th century, or 14th, 15th, I think he might have finished it. But anyway, the latter part of the 14th century, and so I mean it's definitely a distant. It's not accessible necessarily, but the translations are pretty engaging and entertaining. But the thing that really struck me was he's basically an embedded journalist. It just happens to be that he's a highfalutin, royal embedded journalist. I mean, he's part of the company. He's one of their ilk, their same caste. He fits with them. He understands them, and I really loved reading it. But what I thought about was, what if I took that kind of and twisted it and said, what if I had an embedded journalist who is polar opposite of the people he's going to accompany, and so he ends up journeying with this military company that's got a completely different worldview, different approach.
Right.
He's much more sheltered.
You had a warrior class that's respected. You had not that they're not now, but I mean that actually have ownership in things.
Yeah, and so I wanted to have this nerdy kind of chronicler who had no idea what he was getting himself into, going along with them and just being continuously both upset and surprised by everything he encounters along the way. So that was sort of the idea.
What he's got to do as well. He ends up being...
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to... For those who haven't read it, read it. All right. But understand that when you have an embedded journalist that has to be part of the environment around him, or her, in this case of him, things... You might have to put the pen down every now and then.
Yeah. And it changes you. I mean, that was also part of the idea, was that throughout the process of journeying with them, he's not going to be able to maintain kind of journalistic distance and integrity. I mean, he gets caught up in stuff, and he has to make choices. Yeah, and he's got a bias, and he's involved, and he's got to figure out whether or not to go along with it. and he's got moral objections to what happens, and so that was that whole tension was really what I wanted to run with.
Enough, I think that the warriors themselves do as well.
Yeah.
So there's an argument amongst my military friends that the people least likely to want to go to war are military generals and operators because they know the consequence.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd rather not engage in because the consequence always is politically incorrect, and just people die, and they're front line of they're running the people who are dying, and it's bad for everybody. They'd rather show force and hope that nothing happens. And these are people who are now colonels. These are friends of mine who are colonels in armies.
Yeah.
And to see that sort of plays out even in fiction as well is quite refreshing. Because usually you just hear about the general saying, "Let's go to war."
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and in these books, there are no good guys. I think the Ripper that is probably the nicest guy in these books. I think that's cool because it's really about motivations. It's about people they have a plan, they have a goal, and then you have, even amongst themselves, you can see the camaraderie and the value that they have for each other. I mean, there's some real emotional parts, and you're like, but these guys are bad guys. But at the same time, you're also like, but they're human, And so, nothing is clearly defined in the way that I think a lot of people expect stories to be, and I really like that too. I think that's a really cool part of it. You're seeing them. You're seeing the story play out, but you don't know which side to be on. But you just captivated in watching it, and what's going to happen next, and what's really happening. And yeah, there were a couple of times that you caught me off guard.
Good.
So.
Well, that's I'm glad to hear that, because if you went into it knowing what to expect and were were met on every turn with what you thought was going to happen, I think I'd probably would have failed a little bit. So.
And your choices of weapons. It's you go for the crossbow. You go for the ranseur. Did you when you were young and had the player's handbook, and you looked at all the weapons listed? Just imagine what a Guisarm Volge is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
I was trying to imagine how to pronounce it correctly. That's all I was thinking. With my Indian accent, I couldn't quite do it correctly. You see.
Well, and that's in fantasy especially, you see a lot of the same sort of stuff play out, and I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it, but there is a kind of a cursed or arcane weapon in the book, and right from the minute one when I first started the story, I knew that was going to be a part of it. I knew immediately it wasn't going to be a sword, because
Thank God.
I know, exactly. That's been done to death. I would have stabbed myself with a sword before putting that in there. So, and then I went through some of the other weapons that are really common, the bow and the dagger, just all these weapons that appear in billions of fantasy novels. And I thought, it's got to be something, I've got to go in a different way with that. I've got to figure something else out that's going to fit the character, fit the storyline, make sense, and still not be a kind of a typical run-of-the-mill weapon. And then that sort of rippled out. I mean, a lot of the other weapons some of the other characters choose aren't, I wanted to pick weapons that people weren't necessarily familiar with, that somebody would actually have to go, what is that? I have to go in the dictionary and look up that thing, because I don't even know what that is. Yeah. So I hope I didn't frustrate too many people by doing that, but I kind of wanted to pick some things that were unusual.
No, you know what? I disagree with your premise. I think that you shouldn't worry about people's language skills. I think the interest of continuing with the storyline forces them to, either through context, if you did it right, which I assume you did because you're a writer, or B, just curiosity on their own right, going, well, that's a new word I wanted to know, or a new way of thinking about it that I wanted to know. You've now engaged the reader past just the book.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And that's solid point. That's what Stephenson did for me. He's one of my favorite ones, you know, and that's what he did for me as an author.
Oh yeah, his stuff he's got a lot of dense stuff in there that, you know.
You're forced to go. Is he just telling a story around this guy, or is he really talking about what he saw? Holy shit, that is what Alan Turing said. You know, or wow, that is. He just quoted what Principia, for Christ's sake. You know?
Right.
You know, and you got to go. Okay, the man is throwing it down, and you know it's fiction. You know. In your case, I'm more interested in all of the different. I immediately am in the middle of the battle, and that fascinates the hell out of me because in real life, I'm keeping that holy fuck away from the battle. You know? I am a wimp. I am a drone. You know, I don't even do the drones because I might break something. You know, I just don't want to do it. So be in the middle of it while I'm reading is awesome. Awesome. I feel.
Did you consult any historians or weapon specialists about style and armor and all the rest of that? And did you talk to somebody who actually knows how to use a flail?
I actually played around with a replica flail and almost killed myself with it. But I really wanted to see and I got one that was accurate, you know, that the weight, because you pick up a lot of replicas at the Ren Fair or even online, and they're bullshit. I mean, they're not historically accurate at all.
And
they're
the
just
form
meant to
does
be
not
wall
follow
hangers.
the function.
No, right. And so they're just decorative pieces, and they're not, you know, you're not supposed to whip them around or use them ever. And so I got one that was weighted correctly and balanced right, and I thought, you know, I've got to figure out how this works, because if I'm going to write about it intelligently and draw you in and make it realistic and authentic, I should have some idea about what happens here. And so, I mean, I've always, again, going back to history, I've loved history, and I did a ton of research to just try and get a good grasp on tactics and combat and arms and armor, and just how that in the Middle Ages and the classical period, how that would have really played out and what it would have been like, to try and really immerse myself into it, because that was the idea, going back to what Shri said, is really trying to make the reader feel and hear, experience what something like that would be like, as awful as it might be, to really kind of pull you in and make it immersive. And so, yeah, I mean, I used to be in the SCA, and I used to do historical reenactment, and full-fledged geek.
Woohoo!
Yeah, absolutely. And just read a billion books. I mean, it's partly just because I've always enjoyed it, but two, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't getting something wrong, if at all possible. So yeah. And the goal, and going back to your point, Sri, about not being afraid to force the reader or to go look up something in a dictionary or Google it at the very least. No, I agree completely, but at the same time, there's a temptation, especially when you're writing combat scenes, for one, or you're describing architecture. Sometimes there's a temptation to show off all the research you've done. And
I agree there.
And so I wanted to make sure I was dropping in just enough to make it feel livid and real and lived in, and or kind of give it some reality.
Sure.
But at the same time, I don't want to overwhelm the reader to the point where they're just reading this like a catalog of terms and description that they're like, okay, I get it. It's a battlement. Shut up. Move on. We don't need any more about the battlements. Come on. Carry on.
It's not the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Exactly. Thank you.
You know, we're not doing that. I agree. Yeah, but as long as it's enough to make it fun, and it is. Trust me, it is. From perspective of the nice thing is that I don't need to buy necessarily into the background. I am presumed that I'm not where I am when I'm reading it. In other words, I'm not on the planet Earth. I'm not on the west side of Chicago. I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, I know that I am somewhere else, but I don't know anything about that else. I don't need to be Dune where I need to know that I'm on a spice island somewhere. Yeah. Or spice planet, excuse me. I need to know that I am in a new world where the relationships are different than what I know. What is respected and what is the medicine man is not, the doctor is not the most respected. It's the warrior that's the most respected, for example. The innkeeper has more say than the mayor. You know, little things like that. That gives me a perspective of the world that I know I'm traversing, and I don't have to know every detail. I want to, certainly. The real curious reader wants to know more about what you, the author, are thinking of. You know, this city, that world, this world. And we're not quite satisfied with the initial description, only because your job is not to just talk about the city. You're actually going into. You're not an architectural digest person.
Right.
You got a story to tell.
Right.
Me, I'm going. Oh, I want it now that I'm in it now. I want to know everything. I've got a 3D rendering in my head of this city. Yeah. And as a shout out, as a fan of your work, that's the beauty of what I think is. There are others that will tout about the whole fantasy genre thing, and I'm just loving the fact that I can dive into this and know that I am in a galaxy far, far away. You know, I'm on a spice planet. I'm somewhere else from me, and I don't know everything about that. But I'd rather be there right now, trying to understand the environment through the eyes of Archie, at least. And by tangentially through conversation the eyes of the other characters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially the captain. I love the captain. Everyone should. He seems to be the main guy.
He's kind of the star of the show.
He's the star of the show. But the thing is that I don't love him because I like him. I love him because of the way he's constructed, the way he's presented through the eyes of Archie. I love it. Yeah, I think that's. I think excellent. Kudos, sir. Well done.
Thanks. Thank you.
Do you think of your story as being magic heavy?
No, I don't. Especially the first book. It opens up a little more. I've used that kind of metaphor a few times. The aperture opens up for the second book. You get more of everything. More world building. More magic. More history. Just more of everything. In the first book, it's a really tight focus. And because you only get glimpses of like the God Veil or Blood Sounder, you don't know exactly what its properties are or what it does.
Yeah.
If it's even real or if it's just this man is crazy that's wielding it. You don't really get to see a ton of magic. And that was intentional because I wanted to really slowly draw the reader in and expose them one by one, just page by page, especially into the second book, broaden things and really open up the scope. So the second book is definitely more so, but still, I tried to make sure it didn't dominate. It's definitely an element of the world and the story, but it's not central. It's always the characters and their motivations and their issues and their problems and their conflicts, and then everything else that's kind of orbiting around that. It might be magic, it might be history, it might be this or that plays into it, but it's not. I never wanted it to become central. So no, I wouldn't say that it's too much.
And it seems like you approach it more like it's science, which is very cool because, magic needs rules too. You know, when you go into the Harry Potter universe, and anything goes, you're just like, at some point you're like, I don't care. You can write anything now. You've just altered time. But when you have the structures that you put in place for the magic system, then it has rules. And in fact,
magic takes energy. I mean, we know this is D&D old hats. We know this is Dresden Files hats or whatever RPG that you're into right now. There is a cost to doing business.
Yeah, that's it. Cost. There has to be a cost. Because if there's not, if anything goes and it just keeps escalating and people become more and more powerful, leveling up, and can do anything by the end, for me, that loses interest. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not as nearly as engaging because you feel like you're working with superheroes and magic that's just off the chain. It's just crazy, you know, anything.
That's kind of the reason why I never got into the superhero RPG.
Yeah.
You know, that particular, I wanted to keep that to comic book. That's a separate animal. You know, the nice thing about doing fantasy is that, yeah, I'm gonna take a stab at you, and I'm gonna do my best. And oh shit, I rolled a 1. You know.
Slipped in a pool of blood. And you just stab me in the neck. Ouch.
And all of a sudden, I actually can physically feel the spear go in through my armor, going, oh! You can feel it. You're going, oh, dude, that's like 10 hit points. Oh, that's not right.
Well, and that's
my lawyer.
My spleen.
And your hero is like, yeah, he slips and trips and falls and stuff, and he's no Elric of Melniboné.
No.
He doesn't carve through people like they're butter, and that's so cool. Like, he gets hit.
That's so real.
He gets hurt.
Strangely enough, that's so real.
Well,
yeah.
And I mean, you know, you look at so many movies and fantasy novels, and whether it's, you know, a kung fu movie or fantasy or science fiction, so often the heroes just wade through their opponents, the red shirts of the other team. They just wipe them out one by one, and you know, because they're badasses and they're super powerful, and you just accept that they're.
You're preaching to the choir.
But I always, for mine anyway, I really wanted to establish that it's fantasy. There's magic. There's goofy rippers running around. There's stuff that's wacky, but at the core, it's realistic. And I really want the combat to feel realistic. And in real combat, medieval combat, yeah, obviously it's bloody and gory and awful. But you don't have superheroes. You don't have guys that can shrug off blow after blow and knock down 20 guys in a row before getting to the boss and winning the fight. That's not how it works. You have to work in teams. Luck, bad luck, good luck, that impacts the battle. The sun glinting off somebody's helmet in your eye, that impacts, I mean, sweat dripping in your face, that's real shit. And I wanted the characters to really endure that and to demonstrate that there's no magic circles. Nobody's protected. Good guys get, you know, main characters, not necessarily good guys, just the main characters, they get killed. They almost die several times. They get injured. They suffer, you know, post-traumatic stress. I mean, there's just... It's awful stuff to endure, and there's no guarantee that anybody's coming out the other end. I mean, it's a meat grinder. So I really wanted to try and capture that on some level and to make you feel like anything can happen at any minute in one of these battles. And even the main guy you're following, you know, it could be off to any second. So
yeah, and you totally nail it too. You know, because it is very raw, and you're step by step going through the fights. I know a lot of people, I mean, people have their preferences, but I mean, the detail you put in, I appreciate that. I think it's really nicely done compared to, you know, sometimes where the battles just kind of happen and you don't really know exactly what happened, but you know, you get to the outcome, you know.
Okay, so. A question totally different.
Sure.
Almost, let's go back to real time for a minute.
Last time you and I saw each other, the first time we saw each other face to face, it was at the 2012 Homecoming. You were shilling the first book. You were in the gauntlet at CFA. I mean, you were 2 doors down from Wilson and the Lincoln authors. Douglas and Wilson. And walk me through. I'm a budding author. A friend of mine just got me on the list to shill for at the Knox Homecoming. And before that, is there a before that? Are you just given a table and a stack for your books, or do you get to hang out with like prestigious historians and Owen Mulder and Robin Metz and those cats? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was really kind of weird for me that day because I wasn't able to stay overnight at Homecoming. Yeah. So I drove down. I got there literally like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before it started.
Wow.
So there was before, you know, pre-show, green room, there was nothing. I just walked in the door. My books are there, thankfully. I didn't have to do anything. They arranged all that, but I just sat behind the table, had my nameplate, got a pen out. I was like, okay, wipe the sweat off my brow, and I made it. And so then it was, 45 minutes or an hour or whatever it was, and it was, folks like you showed up that I hadn't seen in a long time, and plenty of other people. It was great. I mean, it was fantastic. I wasn't worried about really selling books. It was great to just be there and like as you said, to be right next to Wilson, who's one of the preeminent Lincoln historians in the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And again, I can't go. He's there every year, and I don't know I can deign to approach him. And now I am a Lincoln fan. I mean, I'm doing my third run of Team of Rivals. I just finished the Lincoln biography by Donald E. Donald. I've forgotten his name. It's really quite good if I can remember the author. The thing is, I've got John Jay and Nikolai's version of on my Kindle. It's crazy. I can't go to Wilson because I don't remember him as a professor. And he was one of those. You went to his class and you just soaked up the information. You walked away. You really never had a debate.
Luckily, I did, because I had him for a fiction class, a literature class.
Huh.
And I forget the exact class. It was early 20th century literature, I think. So it was a really small class. There were like 8 of us, and it was great because it had nothing to do with Lincoln. It wasn't historical. It was just him talking about fiction and us doing the same. But it was, even though that wasn't his major area of expertise, the guy was just so freaking smart, and it was such a pleasure just to, 1, absorb information, but 2, to have conversations with him, because he never lorded it over anyone that he's this big expert on one topic. I mean, you would have just thought he was any other professor. I don't even think I knew at the time what a big shot he was in that arena until I saw him on a PBS special, like after I graduated. Sure. And they introduced him and a couple other authors as the leading experts on Lincoln alive. And I was like, holy shit, that's Wilson.
That's it. I'll give you one better. In 2006, I think it was 6 or 7 commencement. It turns out that former President Bill Clinton was speaking at the Knox Homecoming. My wife is a big fan. And I called up friends that I knew and got seats it was us, the jazz combo, and the dais. And we were that close, probably 100 yards from the main thing. Now, the beautiful thing was that when Clinton spoke, one thing that he did was that he had little note card, or he was listening to the valedictorian speech and stole shit from the valedictorian speech. What he was, and he, as if, oh yeah, I was listening to that, and that's a great, and tying into his, Clinton initiative, and you should go out and be great people, all that shit. But out of nowhere, he turns around and he turns to Wilson directly, talks to him, and we're just watching him have a conversation, or a one-sided conversation with Wilson, and quoting from his book. And he actually cited the page.
Wow.
This is the former president of the United States cited the page. And Wilson, actually, by nodding, you could tell that there was a little tear inside, that there is a sitting president of the United States that actually read my book and knows the fucking page.
That's awesome.
At homecoming. My wife saw it and she went, holy, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I say that because it is why that when I approach Wilson, it's almost like if I was approaching like Bootsy Collins, I would do that. I would go, I'm going to stand right here because I don't know if I can be that cute. Just come up and talk to you about bass lines and drumming, So,
more Knox lore. Simple question: are you still a fan of Cracklin' Oat Bran?
You know, I'm going to tell you I'm not, and because they changed the recipe. They did.
Oh no, they did.
They did. I used to eat it religiously, obviously, and it was after college. It was like 1998. I went and bought a box, and it had been a while, so it was like this big nostalgic thing. I was like, I'm going to have some Cracklin' Oat Bran, and I thought about that story, and I thought there's probably some still in the basement at Knox right now, but this is fresh, so I'm going to eat this, and it's going to be fantastic. And you know, it wasn't like 20 years later. It was a couple of years later, and I put this first spoonful in and went, oh no, this is like wood chips and it's pine cones, and it was like, what happened? Why? Don't fuck with this.
Yeah, they messed with all the good things.
They screwed with the recipe. It was new and improved. No.
Did we hear from Megan Scott whether there's still a Cracklin' Oat Bran in the? Because we
did. I just don't have any.
We had that conversation when we talked to her.
I believe it's in there. We have to review her. My friends are awesome.
She said she was going to check it out, but
we'll have to remind her. I'm going to see her at homecoming anyway, so.
Of course.
I have another question. You do bald well, sir, if I may say so.
Oh.
I am reticent to commit. If for no other reason than my wife likes whatever hair I have left.
Yeah, that's a good reason.
At the same time, it is thinning by the minute.
Mm.
I mean, it was
much fuller earlier.
Today.
You can actually watch
just within this hour, you know.
You can watch.
You can see it going.
Of my hair, just through the videos. of the my friends are awesome.
Rats on a sinking ship. It's like it's fleeing his scalp.
I was thinking about doing the whole Michael Jordan thing. You know, a number one buzz to whatever's left, and just let it be every 2 weeks, just a number one buzz, and whatever stubble is left, just let it be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then do underwear commercials.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not working out for nothing, man. I'm gonna be my main goal. I've got what Cameron is talking about is that I have a personal trainer, my wife's friend, come in. Now it's 3 days a week. Come into my house to abuse me in my own house. She will put me through contortions that were not done to fakirs in the 1860s in India that I am going through.
Guantanamo would be horrified. They wouldn't even allow these things to happen.
Guantanamo would be great America at this point. Yeah, I was just measured, and I'm supposedly, I am not necessarily shape-wise any different. I still have the rotund belly and actually I have some definition beneath it. However, I am collectively smaller.
Yeah, you're the same basic shape. You're just proportionately.
Effectively, I've got I used to be a really big pear. Now I'm a smaller. But this is progress because I will tell you this: I feel a difference.
That's awesome.
I press against my tummy and I don't have the Simpsons jiggle anymore. Barely anything. I actually have something like a little chainmail bulletproof vest thing going underneath there.
Nice.
Oh, that's nice. You know, the farther I go down, it's harder to find.
It'll come in time.
It'll come in time. And the whole point of this conversation is just to make myself laugh. But on a bigger scale, I'm wondering, how do we collectively make ourselves drink more drink? Actually, I didn't have. I don't know where I was going with the last. 3 minutes.
Always good to finish with drink more drink, though.
I had to close with something, so I...
Yeah, he just looked down and saw the wine. It was...
And I went, okay, that's what I'm wondering, I'm nervous about doing this.
Well, see, for me, you're talking about the shaving the dome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I had this lush, full mane of hair.
Yes.
Not quite Cameron-esque, but like in high school.
You and I both had something special.
It was thick. It was luxurious. It was awesome. I had the big plastic comb. I used to run it through there constantly. I was so proud of it.
Yes.
And I was about 21 when suddenly the gods said, "Your vanity displeases us, and we are going to smite you, you arrogant bastard." And so, yeah, they struck it down and said, "How about this? Samson, how do you like thinning hair? Enjoy that. See how that works for you at 21." And it didn't work so well. I didn't like it a whole lot. And I struggled with it for about a year and a half. I think I was 20 when the first showed up. So flunk day, senior year, I said, fuck it. I'm done looking in the mirror and being frustrated with my suddenly departing hair. And so that morning, flunk day, sure enough, the bells rang, and I just got to work. I got the buzzers out, I got the razor out.
Nice!
Put the mirror shades on and walked around with this glowing white head that hadn't seen the sun.
Step on that shit, because you could seriously burn your brain. It's not right.
It was not good.
Flunk day of all days. That's awesome.
Yeah, my girlfriend at the time was not. She was not impressed.
Who was your girlfriend at the time? We're on it. Come on.
Elisa Amundsen. And
yes, I remember her.
And so I walked out the door, and everyone was like, "Dude, what's with the glowing white, like almost alien-esque head of non-hair you have going on? What happened?" I was like, "Yeah, just it was time." And I think I let it grow back a couple of times after that for about a year. And it just, after I did it once, it got easier. I did it a couple more times, and pretty soon I just said, "Screw it, I'm done." And it's been bald ever since.
Wow.
Unfortunately, from my perspective, it's a cultural thing. I want to say it's actually a religious thing, but it's really a cultural thing. I was brought up a Hindu, and I am not a practicing Hindu by any stretch. I'm not a practicing anything by any stretch. However, I also am not somebody who foments argument in my immediate family. I can foment argument online.
Wait, so are you saying that your hairstyle is particularly Hindu?
No, let me.
Do they have like a tonsure kind of thing? I haven't heard this before.
One of the things that happens that if you are the male or child, the eldest male child, when the father and then later when the mother passes away, as a sacrifice to your vanity, as a sacrifice to family, you shave your head.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so the reciprocal of that is that if I shave my head collectively, I am effectively divorcing or otherwise asking my father to die, and I know. My old man is healthy as a horse, and he's a good guy, and him and I are tight, I don't want to go, "Hey, fuck you, motherfucker." I also don't want to manage this.
That's a dilemma.
I wonder if I do a number 3 to trim my beard. I use a number 3 guard, and just to keep it full but not full. And I'm going every 2 weeks. I'm just going to number 3 everybody.
There you go.
There's hair, but there's not a lot of hair.
Or maybe you could do a Gallagher thing.
Oh God!
And then have the mullet in the back, the long hair.
Very fun. No. It used to be Kid and Play. It used to be Einstein or Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Now it's Larry Fine. That's what's going on. If I let this grow out, it really just it goes into dense Cindy Brady curls just where there's hair and absolutely nothing. Almost like a landing strip for bugs. Just nothing. with like a hair as an arrestor, you know, at Midway Airport type of thing. It's not right. It's not right. It really is.
So Jeff, is there anything else you want to bring to our attention? Anything else you want to plug, or?
Well, let's see.
Anyone else?
You know, that's a good question. I already told you the book 3 is coming along.
You said, when did you say it was? November next year?
November next year. Yeah.
Oh, November 26th, 15.
2015.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So that's the goal. And right now I feel pretty good about what I've got. It's raw, but it's definitely a good start.
Nice. Now, is this to close the trilogy, or is it?
It is, yeah.
You intend to package this as 3 books.
Yep. I mean, it's one of those things where I might leave the door open somewhat to possibly revisit someday, but I do want to have closure for the storyline and the main characters. It's definitely going to wrap up, so it'll be a coherent, cohesive single series, and it'll be done. Right. And then I think it might leave, like I said, leave the door open a crack the way I sort of anticipated ending. Someday I might circle back to it, but yeah.
Well,
trilogy.
Here's the smartest continuation novels that I've seen. Either you go very direct, you're tying directly in historically or timeline. Legend of Korra, for example, is very much we know how Aang ended. We know that he survived and him and Katara went, got together, and we don't know anything about the between. But all of a sudden, we know that he's dead. Katara is an old woman. Most of the old crowd is dead, and we know the new Avatar. That I think the way they did it in Nickelodeon's Avatar series is very beautiful in the fact that you don't necessarily need to know anything other than there was an Avatar named Aang. His wife was Katara, who we meet in episode 2, and we know the new Avatar is this. Anyone who was a fan would buy into that before, but they could just universally get into this story without even knowing anything, and it will tangentially get back to there. If you're interested, you can go back to those 3 books.
Yeah, Joe Abercrombie did something sort of similar that I really appreciated. His first 3 books were a trilogy and self-contained, and it wrapped up his storyline. And then since then, he's done nothing but standalones. They're set in the same world, but they're definitely just one-offs set in a different part of the world.
That's cool.
Different region, different characters, and occasionally he'll have a cameo by somebody from the original trilogy.
Right.
Like they'll just pop in just for a minute, sort of as an Easter egg to any readers that are following. They can say, "Oh my gosh, there he is, and what's he up to?" But it's not central at all to what happens, and it's definitely peripheral, kind of, "Hey, I'm here, I do my thing," and poof, back to your main characters. And it works really, really well because obviously it's brand new, and you don't have to have read the first trilogy to get it. But it does loosely all tie together, and it's all.
Clancy did that too.
And it makes it kind of makes the world or the environment a character.
Yeah, it does.
It makes the whole thing just I love that idea. That's great.
So I think that's probably what I might model it after that. We'll see. I haven't totally decided what's next after this book. I'm still kind of juggling some ideas, but I do like that.
Tropes. I really do. If I may, I do hate the word tropes. Tropes is somewhat derogatory in the literary world. And I'm kind of wondering, you know what? When they work, tropes are exactly what you need.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just it. I mean, you can take something somebody's used and seen plenty of times, and if you put a new spin on it, and you make it your own, and you, at least somehow put it in a different context at the very least, so that it does feel fresh. There's plenty of, quote unquote tropes that can be done really, really effectively. Just because it's an old archetype or storyline or whatever, that people have seen before doesn't mean it's dead. I mean, there's certainly ways to make that really still interesting. It's just a matter of skill and handling, So I think you can take almost any idea and then.
The only reference that I have is music, and we are very happy as musicians to steal the best of the best from other musicians that we've dissected and listened to and go, oh, I love that riff, and I'm going to use it. I do it all the time as a drummer. I practice my drums as if I'm trying to practice a Stuart Copeland or Neil Peart or whoever drummer you'd like to throw down. But what I'm getting from that is that what they do, and then pick the one thing that I like and go, I could use this in my own thing that I want to try out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to be completely original, but at least I'm going to be my style that I've stolen from these people and then practice something that I like, and this is how I put it together. English is restricted. All of the greats are restricted in a bubble that they have. You have words. You can't really go around and you can make up new words, but they have to be contexted to something else. Styles as well, tropes as well. I really am bothered by the word trope and how in literary critique that it's used as a derogatory. I think that, well, if you recognize that at least that one theme, what did you miss?
Mm-hmm.
Or how did they twist it to make it their own? At least talk about that. Yeah.
I mean, I think what they fixate on, those types of critics and reviewers, when they use the terminology trope, is what they're just basically saying is it's derivative. That it feels old hat, it's tired, and it's something that's been done to death, and they didn't do anything fresh with it. I think that's what they're trying to get across, is that, so they're using the term trope as derogatory to kind of demonstrate, this person didn't really freshen it up at all. They didn't synthesize it. They didn't do anything new. They just kind of rehashed. And that, I think, back to your point, Cameron, I think there are plenty of writers, not just in fantasy, across other genres, that they do take a story, they might put a slightly fresh coat of paint on it, but ultimately you strip it down a little bit and you go, yeah, I've read that. I know that. Mm-hmm. I know these characters. I know what's going to happen. And that can be comfortable and fun and kind of junk foody sort of way. It could be relaxing and comforting to fall into something that you're familiar with and you like. But I think the really good writers, they'll take something that's familiar and they'll kind of defamiliarize it. They'll take it in a different area and they'll do something new with it. So.
Yeah. So next time, next story, Jeff. Day in the life of Hornman. That's what you got to do. I've often wanted to put a spotlight on, like in Rambo movies or any of these action movies where you see the hero going through like tons of mercenaries, just wiping them out. Follow one of those guys around for a day or for a week and do a story about him, and then the last scene you see Rambo running across the field and shooting, and then they roll the credits. It's like you find out he's got a wife or a girlfriend, and his mother's sick, and and then he gets aligned with the bad guy in the drug cartel, and he's told to stand at the corner and with a gun.
Red shirts have dreams and lives too. They're not just there to be gunned down. They have a story.
That's right.
They're bad shots, but they have a story.
Dear, it's. I only have 24 hours, and then I'm grabbing the next shuttle back to Rigel 6. They're making me go down to this planet. I know. I'll be fine. Don't worry.
Nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about.
For me, it's all gonna be good. I'll phone you tomorrow.
And then I'm gonna get on. I'm gonna clean up, pack, and then I'm off. It's fine.
It's all good.
I promise you, Ryza in a month.
Okay. Absolutely.
So, pleasure trips. We are now into the 20 questions.
I think so too. Yeah, I think it's time.
All right.
Cameron, will you please describe the 20 questions?
Okay, so we have our dice. We have the D6 number cube, and that describes how many questions we will ask you.
And then this key.
And then that's the 20-sided, the D20.
Gotcha.
And we're all familiar with the D20. And that lists, we have a list of questions, 20 questions, and the die roll will determine which.
Oh my, we've gone pretty long, but I guess we still have a little more time because we have 6 questions.
Some of the questions are real quick, you know.
I'll try to be
some
pithy.
of them are, and I've done a little while we were chatting. By the way, I've done some changes, so I've got some interesting questions that we won't.
Okay.
But
so now you feel confident of the questions. You're not going to bail on them.
no, they're right in front of me, and I will bail as I please. But I'll try my best to be adherent to the questions.
Okay.
For example, number 2, I'm reading straight from the thing. What is the most favorite thing? What is your most favorite thing that comes out of the ground, and why?
Okay.
You understand how general that question is, by the way.
It is, yeah. That could be silver or bean sprouts.
Yeah.
Or, you know, if you're grave digging, there's all kinds of stuff that comes out. Wow. See, this seems like it should be a simple question, and I'm going to wrestle with it.
No. None of these are actually as simple as they seem. None of them.
No, because I could just say radishes, but, you know, that's not true.
Are you a radish fan, though?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
I just, you know, panic, not being able to decide on something.
It's just that came up before, and I was like, wow, this world is full of radish lovers. It's you know.
That's the first thing that they go to is the radish. Is there a radish conglomerate that is?
It's a subculture we didn't know about. See?
We're drinking good wine and radish, and you know we're not even hearing it.
Yeah. No. Okay. You know, I'm going to say trees.
Trees. Okay.
Yeah. Trees.
And why?
Oxygen, man.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I just there's nothing is relaxing to me. I mean, I could go on foods and grapes and all kinds of, you know, that's probably where I first was going to go. But for me, even though I don't do it very often, walking through the woods and just kind of, that's a great place to brainstorm and to decompress and just like walking through the trees. I love it. So.
Whereabouts do you live again? You live right like
Addison.
West suburbs. Addison.
Yeah.
And so, isn't there a forest preserve around there, just like a couple of miles away?
There's some nice ones, and then there's the Morton Arboretum.
Okay.
And,
farther south.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
The idea is this. I actually agree with the one-off thought about it because the city of Aurora just cut out their owned tree out of front of my lawn. They did so because there is a ash borer disease that is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And without any guidance or anything, they were assuming that the caretaking suburbanite has to take care of that tree for the city. I thought I'd pay taxes so the city could do that, but I was mistaken, obviously.
Clearly.
And now the city has decided that this tree is infected, we have to cut it. Great. The city now has a deal that if I were to invest $200, they will plant a new tree. Now, personally, I'm thinking $200. Financially, I'm not that. It's a dent to something that I don't necessarily help me. But $200 is not that much money in the grand scheme of a tree, you know. And I went, great, I'm ready. The actual cost is $400, but $200 from the city, $200 from mine. But my other question is, wait, you as a city mandate cut down my tree that you never gave me instruction to take care of.
Right.
Now you want me to pay $200 to have that tree replaced with a different tree. which I'm more than happy to do, but in a slightly different location, because you can't put the tree in the same place. Now, when is the onus put upon those who put the trees in? If it was my backyard, I'd immediately throw 2 trees in, but I would need a permit from the city to do so.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't realize, Jeff, that you were getting into this, did you?
I should have stuck with radish.
You should be thinking about the trees. And go to the next roll. Nice play, gentlemen. Nice. Oh, and that's the one I didn't want to roll because I haven't edited it yet. Here's another one. If you couldn't, for whatever reason, study the major you graduated in, what major would you have chosen and why?
Did you graduate with writing?
Yeah,
English
creative
writing. Yeah. Okay.
So not English, not creative writing or lit.
In other words, if you were to pull out of that whole division,
yeah,
pick and then be specific about that.
Yeah, that's a really tough one because I never, despite the fact that it's not a marketable degree.
Shuts me the fuck up, though.
Yeah. I always knew that's what I wanted to focus on, and family was just like, English. What are you gonna do with that? You can't do anything with it in the real world. No, you can't. That's okay. I'm fine with that. And so I never even considered anything else. So let me think.
That's why I'm throwing that at you. That the first choice is not your choice. You can't go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I got it. I would probably say theater, even though I wasn't a very good actor. I took some theater classes and I took some playwriting classes, and that'd be my one escape hatch here, is that I could still do something I'm good at.
Yeah.
And it's in a different major. So I think that would probably be my...
Ivan Davidson, anything?
Yeah, and those were some of the best classes I took at Knox. I mean, Robin Metz obviously was my mentor and primary professor, but I took Ivan for a few different classes, and those playwriting classes were amazing. I learned more in those classes, and in the theater history classes and the beginning acting and all the rest of it. I mean, I love those classes. So that'd probably be my default if I had to pick something else. Yeah.
Do me a favor. Explain differently, since you have that knowledge, to the layman, the difference between writing a novel and writing a short play, or writing a chapter, if you will, maybe a short story and a play.
Well, with a play, you've got obviously nothing but dialogue, and then your playwright directions, to the actors or to the director. But those are pretty small. I mean, some playwrights go off and write huge amounts of just description to kind of set the scene and to give the director, and they're really hands-on and trying to manipulate what the end product is going to be by saying, this is really what needs to happen here and here's why. But a lot of the playwrights, those types of descriptors or just that context is pretty minimal. Mostly it's just obviously going to be dialogue. That you have to convey history and meaning and relationships and conflict and all the rest of it. It's just
and beginning and end, if you will.
Yeah. And so that was one of the great challenges that I loved about it. Is you can't fall back on any of your other strengths if your strength is describing the setting or the scene or the way a character looks, or that doesn't matter. I mean, very minor. You might describe a character in the first scene of a play, but really, casting. You're not a casting director. That's somebody else's job. So your job is just to work on the language. So you're really. I think it was really good because I couldn't. There was no that you had to just wrestle with that stuff and make that work. And anytime I had my normal inclination would have been to try and use some of the other things I'm good at writing. They're just not available or very limited capacity. So that was one of the best things about it. And I think that really focus on just dialogue is one of the things I took away from it. Is that I feel like I'm a much better writer of dialogue now, having taken those classes even 20-some years ago, than I would be otherwise, just because I think those really honed some of those skills. Whereas with a play, I mean, with a story or chapter or book, whatever you want to use this for, just fiction. I mean, you've got a broader palette, I guess, of things that you have to try and use language to convey. So you have more tools in some way, but because of that, it's easy to kind of for it to spread out and to really be less controlled and focused. And so I think that was the best thing about the playwriting class, is just how you just had to buckle down and do it, and you had to really you knew immediately when you would hear your dialogue spoken, you go, oh my God, that's such shit, that's terrible, I can't believe I thought that was good. And whereas with fiction, half the time you're not reading it out loud, although you should. I think most fiction writers should read stuff out loud, because that's when you catch things like that. But it's so easy to just make things that are literary, and you're not worried about whether or not it's good dialogue. And so, yeah. I mean, I think that was really startling, especially the first thing I started writing in that class, when you'd read out loud and you hear somebody do a little mini play version of it. You go, oh, holy hell, that sounded so good in my head and on the page, and yet it's utter shit when it's spoken.
Yeah, so, it's like no one would say that.
Ever.
The next question: Did James Joyce, when he was writing, did he actually read his own stuff and went, "Oh man, that sounds like pretentious bullshit," or or Kant, just to throw it out there, because they're writing a treatise for people to try and understand. Coming from the philosophy side, because to bring Cameron in the conversation, are the philosophers actually trying? Are they reading the nonsense that they write and go, I want to convince people that I am correct in my thinking of the worldview of existence?
When you're doing it, you're so far inside, you can't realize that the language is not approachable.
But I argue that the whole point of
it makes perfect sense when you've been doing it for years, especially if you're looking at the same thing. I've looked at stuff that I wrote in Knox, and it makes a lot less sense to me now, even though I've still kind of stuck with the philosophy thing. I'm not as embedded, I'm not as immersed, and so it's like being dropped into Spain or something. I turn
around and I go, wait a minute, given what Jeff just said about taking the Ivan Davidson's class on playwriting, where you have to read the dialogue, where you're presenting this dialogue in space, helps you understand what you're putting to paper.
Yeah, but it makes perfect sense to you, because that is the language that you speak. And if you were talking with other people who spoke that language, they would know what you were saying. But if you're just like, if you're talking to just anybody, they're not going to pick it up. And to some extent, let's just face it, in academic circles, I have a feeling that they are just talking to each other.
Especially, in philosophy, it's sort of a closed circuit that way. You're not writing for the layperson generally. No. I mean, that's not the audience, really.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Coming from somebody who is not versed in philosophy or English writing, as a scientist, I'm looking at my exposure to Shakespeare, and I was presented Shakespeare as literature, not as playwright.
Yeah, but have you looked at scientific papers?
Oh, tons.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but they're not presenting.
Yeah, that's not my language.
But they're not presenting it as a play.
But they're presenting it to other people who can understand it, and that's what Kant was doing.
Oh, I see. You're saying that.
Yeah, that's the difference between playwriting and
the philosophy papers were actually just catering to philosophy.
To people who think that way, yes.
Well,
back then, I'm not sure that it wasn't.
Not at all, really?
What?
Das Kapital was.
It was a bunch of people sitting around thinking, and it wasn't necessarily for people who were working in the iron mills.
Yeah, I'm just saying that. Was he selling that? Or was he pitching that publication just to other philosophy dudes, or was he?
Back in that time period, all of the smart people were just sending letters back and forth to each other.
No, I'm talking about publications. I'm talking about Das Kapital. I'm talking about
Mein Kampf.
Mein Kampf. was Mein Kampf the no different than what Hillary Clinton put out for? Is it meant to be an advertisement that I want to be a player?
As I understand it, Mein Kampf was put out for the public at large, and he kind of resented the intellectuals, and so I mean that was for public consumption and probably not the greatest. I'm
kind of wondering if he just took a theater class, he would have.
So,
Adolf, read it out loud. Come on.
Read it. Do you realize what you're saying?
Did I write that? Holy Scheiße, I didn't write that.
He probably did, and he had an audience of thousands, so, and they screamed and loved it. So
it's true.
So are we on to 3?
What is your favorite kind of pizza and why? Number 19.
Deep dish, and probably it's changed. It used to be, the meat lovers back in the day. Yeah, but I think now it would be something like spinach, mushroom, and black olive.
Dude, have you gone vegetarian?
No.
Get to your video cam and give me the bump. Boom. That's
boom.
Dude, that's exactly the dish that I would pick. Much to the derision of my family, and I'm going, fuck it.
You're just eating healthier?
Trying to, and okay. It's just I don't eat nearly as much red meat as I used to. I mean, it's pretty rare, and when I do, it doesn't do so well anymore. And my system's not used to it. It used to be a cast iron stomach.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be my dish.
Yeah, getting old's a bitch.
Yeah, it sucks. No getting around it.
Number 4.
The fourth question is, if your internet was shut off for a week, what would you do with your time for that week?
That would be pretty easy, because I would get a lot more reading and writing done. The internet's a sinkhole. I mean, not just Facebook, but anything. You get onto a forum, a chat room, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Just even reading stuff online. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up, and I'll look at the clock and go, holy hell, I meant to be writing 2 hours ago, and I've just wasted all that time, and I haven't accomplished anything.
Yeah. And
so, yeah, I would be a lot more productive. I probably should just unplug for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, you have to promote though too. I mean,
yeah, and that's true, and that's.
Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy the Twitter and all of the promotion and stuff like that?
I do. I don't know that I'm necessarily great at it. Because
beat the hell out of me. I mean, you have interesting stuff. I mean, you bring in the family and stuff like that, and I find it always so hard to think of something worthwhile to put.
See, and I usually fall back on, because I try and balance it out if ever I'm posting stuff on Facebook or my blog, which I don't even post much on anymore, but just anytime I'm putting stuff out there, I will try and do a ratio of like at least 2 to 1, like stories, anecdotes about my kids, anecdotes about something I saw on the train, just something goofy or silly or stupid.
That's strange. I do the same thing, but I don't actually think about it. You know what I mean? It ends up being that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a conscious thing all the time, but I mean, I think I catch myself if I post too many things about my books or whatever, something related to the books. Well, because I think there's this innate fear that it's going to be either pretentious or it's not interesting. That there's only a small group of people that might want to continue reading that. That's a lot of the people, especially on Facebook, they couldn't give two craps about my books. They just hear about the kids and they like the kids' stories. So.
Yeah. And you're afraid of it being too spammy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's some writers who they're just constantly out there. It's a barrage, and yet sometimes it seems off-putting and people get repelled by it. And other times I've seen some and they're constantly spamming, and yet they've got a huge audience and they're doing really well. And I'm like, well, I don't know.
Facebook is different than Twitter. Facebook is all of your friends, and it's you spam your friends and you should suffer for it. But like, but Twitter, people, I know that some people watch it like TV, and then they might be repelled by all of the repeat promotions. But most people just check in, and if you're constantly putting it out there, they're going to see it twice.
Right.
And I think that's how it works. I mean, I'm kind of with you. I feel kind of icky doing it.
So you're telling me that Twitterverse is the front face of advertising.
Yes.
And while
it's a powerful, free way to get your message out.
Your shit out, and nobody. It's a way to disseminate information.
And it's harder to, I think, offend people or ruffle feathers or be spammy if you're just putting stuff out. Even if that's all you do on Twitter is put stuff out about whatever your project is or whatever your pet thing is, because like you said, people don't. It's not. Facebook is a different animal, and I might have people that check in to read my stuff about my kids constantly just because they think it's funny, and they're not interested in the book stuff, and so those are the people. I'm not trying to sell to them anyway, so it doesn't matter. But
that corporate media and everyone on television, the old way of disseminating information. It seems that on corporate media sites, they actually lean to Twitter to see what's trending. In other words, if all I got to do is get my little hashtag to trend up, and everyone's all of a sudden interested in train rides from Chicago to Aurora, And I'm wondering, is that where interest is going? To gauge interest, I have to tweak the trend on the Twitter.
You have to be.
It's really hard to say.
You have to be real. You have to be a real person, though.
And then make it real on Facebook with a personality, with a everything starts on the Facebook, or everything starts from the blog and goes to the Facebook, dumps on the Twitter, or goes through the Twitter, jumps on the Facebook, and then you use that Facebook trend to go, no, I'm really here. Hi, how you doing? Do you have a question about what I just posted? Now the active site is the Facebook, but everything else is automated through WordPress or blog site or whatever. I don't know. I know I have an active blog site now for just the train ride, and I haven't been active on it as much as I'd like to be, only because I've been so busy.
Yeah.
I'm wondering.
That's the thing, though. You need a platform. If you're famous, then who you are is the platform. Otherwise, I guess some people like to hear what you had for breakfast. But, I feel like
that makes create
if your platform is what I had for breakfast, then I'm sure people would flock to it once they found you.
It's not crackling open or radishes.
Hey Shree, shall we do number 5?
This is 5. Thank you. I was just about to ask. 14. Who's your celebrity crush and why?
Oh.
Russell Crowe. No.
Guys are okay. I would say I have more. I like a lot more male actors than female. I'm just more impressed with them. But
I would say, and this makes me feel like an old perv dog, probably Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because I think she's an amazing actress. I think she's a better actress than she gets credit for, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, The Girl with the Golden Earring. You watch something like that. Some of her earlier stuff. I think she's certainly capable as an actress, but really that's not why a lot of guys watch Scarlett. It's clearly other reasons.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously guilty of those.
Usually the latex industry is the sole reason why.
Yeah, Black Widow. I mean, you can't go wrong. So yeah, there we go.
Okay. And number 6.
Number 6.
Do they drop it in the wine?
What was it? Okay, here. This is a great question. I just changed this, and I'm glad I wrote it. What was an event that you participated in that was outside your comfort zone, or separate to the question, or what friends and family wouldn't believe you participated in? They just go, no, that's not. That can't. Jeff didn't do that. That's the whole point. What did you do that everyone else?
You allude to a lot of things on your feed about the times when.
Yeah.
And then you don't go into many details.
What have you actually done that your friends and family would go, no, not Salyards. You wouldn't have done that.
Went to church.
Something significant at church.
Yeah. A significant event.
That's.
Okay. It's tough because obviously there's different levels there. There's people who know me really, really well that they know those illusions. They were there. They've seen, and they know all the horrible or ridiculous or stupid, foolish things I've done in my life. They wouldn't be surprised by anything.
And then there's stuff that you would say that we'd have to edit out for your own protection.
And that's anything you can't say here.
Something that surprised you based on your. I want, from your perspective, what you think would have surprised your people who would assume about you.
Yes.
Okay. Let me think about that for just a minute here.
Take your time and chat a little bit because I got to take
Okay, let me think about it. Something that would really have surprised people. Well, I think I'll wait till Sri comes back. I have one that's not G-rated, but not going to get me in the orange jumpsuit or in the doghouse or in too much trouble here. So I have one that a lot of people who only know me, not my closest friends, they wouldn't be surprised by it. But the majority of people who know me in any other, capacity would probably go, "Whoa, really? You seem like such a nice guy, really?"
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. I think
I got
it.
some of those too.
Yeah, and there's plenty that I can't ever say here.
No.
So I'm trying to pick one that's sort of benign. Okay, yeah, I've got it.
So where are you in your house? That's the other question we asked, because we've been talking to people all over the country. And out west, nobody has basements or attics.
That's true.
And a lot of people here in Chicago or the Midwest have their computer in their basement. They have like a livable basement space. Is where you are now where you normally have your computer?
No, I moved it downstairs because my computer's normally upstairs in my office, and it's right next to the kids' bedroom.
Okay.
And so I moved it down to the kitchen.
Do they all share one room?
No, 2 rooms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 2 little ones get one space, and the older one gets the big space.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So he figured it out.
Okay.
One that's probably surprising to most people. Maybe not shocking because again, there's a handful that they know that I'm capable of this, but isn't going to get me in trouble. So when I was 26 or so, it was a bunch of buddies from Knox who I hadn't seen in a while came. I was living in Bloomington Normal at the time.
You were Sigma Nu, right, by the way, weren't you?
What's that?
You were Sigma Nu, weren't
Nope.
you?
No.
No.
You were GEI.
Didn't pledge anything.
Excellent.
And so I had this old dog shit brown Buick Skylark. And it wasn't a great car, but it was a nice enough car for me, and it was certainly in good condition. And all of my friends got together, and we were drinking very heavily. And after drinking for a number of hours, we decided we were going to drive to the bar because, that makes perfect sense at that point. Yeah. You're 26, and why wouldn't you drive to the bar when you're drunk, of course?
Yeah.
We're out of alcohol. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So we drove to the gas station. It was like 45 degrees, and I was in shorts. And I got out to pump gas. And my friends locked the door, thinking that would be really funny that I couldn't get back in because I was cold and shivering, forgetting that I was really drunk at the time. And the thing that jumped into my head as a really good idea was to kick my window in, my driver's side window in. So I took one step back, and I'm 6'4" and about 240, a lot of weight, a lot of size. So I took one step back, reared back my leg, and just planted it right in the driver's side window. And sure enough, it shattered, and glass sprayed on everybody that was in the car.
Oh, my God.
And they were in shock. And I yelled at them. I'm like, "You don't lock me out of my own car!" And I stormed up to the...
Yeah, you said that.
I did. So I stormed up to pay the clerk, and the clerk, I think, thought I was going to kill him or rob him or something. He was like backing away from the cash register. He's like, "Just take some Slim Jims and go. Just don't hurt me. I just played." And I was still livid that my friends had locked me out. And I'm cold, and now I'm mad because I broke my car. And so I just threw some money on the counter, and I'm like, damn it. And I went and got back in the car, and we're driving to the bar. And Doug Folger, I don't know if you remember Doug or not.
Yeah.
He was sitting behind me, or next to me, it doesn't matter. And he started to instigate a little bit because he knew when I get rolling like this, I become a force of nature. And they were all just still in shock. I'd kicked my window in. And so he starts looking around the car. He's like, "What?"
At all at the time? Or?
No, I wasn't, surprisingly.
Okay.
I got it mostly with the flat of my foot, and it just shattered in like 1,000 pieces.
Wow.
And so he looks up and he says, "It's not too sunny out. You don't need the visors, right? Is there anything else in the car you don't need? Let's get stuff let's economize. Let's get rid of stuff you don't need in the car." It's like, "So the visors, you don't need those. It's not sunny." I was like, "You're right." And so as I'm driving, I grabbed the visor and I just
ripped it off
ripped it out and chucked it out the window.
No!
And now everybody in the car is like, "Wow, he's willing to go anywhere with this. Let's see what'll happen." And yes.
The chime ballot.
And so they progress. The interior light. It's not dark out. We don't need the interior light.
Oh my God.
Why don't you get rid of that? And again, I'm still going like 50 miles an hour, drunk.
Yeah.
And I reach up while driving, and I grab the interior light, and I wrestle with it for a minute, and I finally pull it free, except the wires are still attached. And so it's just ripping zigzag holes all across the roof of the car as I'm trying to rip it out.
Oh, you ripped up the inside out?
Yes. Until I finally pulled it free, like 4 feet of wire comes free, and I tossed that out the window.
I'm sorry, I broke the dice that I was rolling just now.
Oh my God.
Don't mind that. It's a 20-sided die, and the one-sided die, I just broke it into... Why do I need them? I've got a whole bag.
And so, this continued for a little while.
I did it.
And until we got to the gear shift. That's where I finally drew the line. My buddy's like, "Do you need the gear shift? You don't need that,
oh my
do you?"
God.
It's like, "You're driving. Just keep it in drive. Just rip that sucker out." And I actually grabbed a hold of it while still driving, and I almost started to pull on it. And then I was like, "Wait a minute. No.
No.
Hang on.
I do need the gear shift. I'm keeping that."
Yeah.
Days.
Oh my God.
And yeah, sure enough, we pull into some bushes and hit a wall and get out and go to the bar. And how I did not get arrested and spend from then until now in jail, I don't know, but I did not.
Galesburg, baby.
Yeah.
Wow. That's and okay. So did you remember it the next day?
Most of it, yes. Yeah.
And did you have any regrets as you looked at your car the next morning? You're like,
yeah, because it was almost winter. It was about October. and it got cold fast, and yeah, I couldn't afford to fix the window, so I just had to drive with plastic on it for for a while.
You know, you see those cars when you're driving around,
and you wonder what the story is.
Like, now I know the story.
That's right.
Oh my God! Wow. Okay. And did you ever repair the car?
I repaired it enough to sell it, and I sold it to another, poor college student that just was willing to shell out a few $100s. So,
okay.
No, I didn't repair most of it. I did manage to fix the window, but the rest, the roof was just zigzag holes in it, and yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's quite a story. That's good.
There you go.
Okay. So you survived the D20 questions. I think we've taken up enough of your time. This is like a full-length movie here. We've done a movie right here. So
I will openly say that most of the shit that I was talking about you can cut out. Seriously, get to the chase of what I was trying to say, and all the rest of that nonsense, just go ahead and cut it out. It's okay. I'm fine with it.
Absolutely.
That would turn this from a 90 thing to at least a 75.
Edit as you will.
Including what I'm talking about right now. Cut out.
Yeah. All right, well, guys, it's been fun.
Yeah. Thanks for sitting and talking with us, and we're looking forward to the Chains of the Heretic. Is that
Chains of the Heretic?
Chains of the Heretic.
In all seriousness, Jeff, the reason why you're on our list is not because you're awesome, because you are, but it has been 2 times since you and I have encountered each other, and it has been nothing but fun when we're just specifically talking about the work that's coming out of your head.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure. Exposed head, if I may say so. And I wanted, even if you're fans that are outside of the Nox sphere, come across this, to realize that there are people who respect you, who knew you before you even thought about this, or were thinking about this, were incubating this idea, and respect you enough to approach you as somebody who we thought you actually did what we are thinking of doing.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
We haven't thought of it. We're still thinking of doing it.
Shree, now you're starting to sound like Kant.
That motherfucker.
Okay. Well,
right.
Thanks a lot, man. And
no, seriously, thank you.
We'll watch you on Facebook and your promotion and everything, and keep kicking ass.
All right.
I'll talk to you again after I've finished reading your third. So.
All right. Terrific.
Okay.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.